Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dennis Bickmeyer. I'm the president of Richmond International Raceway, and just wanted to take a couple minutes this afternoon. We appreciate Denny Hamlin being here. If you recall, maybe a couple weeks ago, we recently announced the return of the Denny Hamlin Short Track Showdown to Richmond International Raceway. We want to talk to Denny for a couple minutes today. There's a special announcement now as a next step of that goes along, announcement of a partial list of the drivers that will be appearing with Denny in a short track showdown. But before we get to that, I'd just like to have Denny comment a little bit on the background for the event, the Denny Hamlin Short Track Showdown. Again, this will be the third year that it will be held at RIR. Denny?
Yeah, it's obviously an event that we've grown quite a bit over the last few years, and obviously with the participation of RIR and a lot of the drivers participating in it, it continues to grow. But really it's about kind of mixing the established Cup drivers, the show names with the kids that are coming up through the ranks, such as you saw this past few days with guys like Kyle and CE, which oddly enough CE won our very first short track showdown at Southside in a fashion where he knocked me out of the way in the last corner. So it was ironic that it happened that way for him this couple days ago. So, but it'd be cool. Larson was not on our list as one of the guys that was invited, but now he will get an invitation. So he obviously spices things up, and CE wanted to make sure that he was going to be there for that event. So it's been good. Obviously, it's all about the foundation that obviously we've started 5 or 6 years ago. So we had donated some money to some hospitals in the Richmond area that do cystic fibrosis research, and they're very, very close to having a cure for that. And so every dollar that we can help raise for this event is going to hopefully help a lot of people that are affected by cystic fibrosis, because it is one of those diseases that can be cured. It's very, very close to being cured. So we hope to put it over the edge sometime this year.
And as Denny mentioned, the money raised from that night is generated off of ticket sales. So just as a reminder, ticket sales for that evening, tickets are on sale. They are $25 per ticket for the evening. It also features a NASCAR K&N E-Series race as well on Thursday night, April 25th. Kids 12 and under are free for that evening as well. But again, we're out pushing hard because, as Denny said, all the money that's raised will benefit VCU Children's Hospital and the great work that his organization is doing with cystic fibrosis research. So, Denny, you mentioned a couple of driver names. How about if we get into it? Can you talk a little bit about the invites that have been accepted for 2012 or 2013, and then again we'll have some more announcements down the road?
Yeah, the list will continue to grow, and right now we've really locked in 3 to 4 guys. But we know that Kyle Busch will be back. Tony Stewart's already verbally committed to it. Darrell Wallace, one of the development drivers for JGR, will be in it, as well as myself, and obviously there'll be about 5 or 6, I'd say, other commits here in the next few weeks leading up to the event. So we obviously, Tony won it last year. Kyle's led on the last lap, I think, twice or so, not won it yet. So he'll be back, and that's always a exciting thing to watch. So we're excited to have them back. It's very nice of them to lend their time for us to try to raise money for charity. So thank everyone for their support media-wise with this event. We couldn't get it out to the names of the people that will buy the tickets unless you guys are covering it. So I thank you all for that.
And like Denny, there are some other Virginians that will be participating in the short track showdown. Greg Galding, a name we heard a lot last night as well as Curtis Markham, who's from Fredericksburg. So again, it gives a lot of great opportunities to some young up-and-coming drivers as well. We'll be open, take a couple questions in regards to the short track showdown before I turn this over to Kerry Tharp. Any questions for Denny regarding the showdown? Yes, sir.
Mike Neff from FrontStretch.com. Denny, there was discussion that it may move to Langley this year, and then they just announced that it is going back to Richmond. What was the premise behind eventually going back to Richmond instead of going to Langley?
A lot of it is the logistics of it. Is these guys obviously have Cup practice or nationwide practice early in the morning. on Friday morning. So logistically, it made more sense for us to keep it at RIR. So it was easier to get Cup drivers to participate and all that, along with giving the opportunities for the short track guys to be on the big track, be one of the preliminary events to what is the Cup weekend at RIR that in April. So that's the biggest reason for it, is obviously logistics for the Cup guys, as well as letting the other guys shine on a bigger racetrack.
Question right here, sir.
Dwight Drum, racetake.com. Denny, as far as the short tracks go, could you kind of give us a feeling of what you like best about a short track and why you think it's so important, for so many NASCAR drivers and fans?
Well, I think you learn how to race on a short track. I think that nobody here in the Cup Series grew up running 1.5-mile racetracks or 2-mile racetracks. It's unless you came from like IndyCar or something, but it teaches you how to race. It's in close confines, and basically you take that skill set and you kind of change it and massage it for a bigger racetrack. Aerodynamics are not as big of an effect on a short track. You really learn a whole lot about your throttle and brake technique on short tracks, and really, to me, it teaches you how to drive.
Any additional questions regarding the short track showdown? Nate?
Nate Ryan, USA Today Sports. Denny, I'm sure you were following Twitter after the Larson thing the other night. Talking about how you're inviting him to the short track showdown, did you find what he did like all that reprehensible, and is that something we would almost want to see at your track 2 months from now, or at Richmond, I should say? Well, it is your track, I guess, but 2 months for your short track showdown. Is that the kind of action you want?
Not really. I mean, honestly, you want to see some rooting and gouging, but you can't have a free for all. It's one thing is you can't just say that. Okay, no matter what you do and how blatant it is, it's okay. Now, I really like Kyle and I like CE, but, when CE moved me for a race win, he just moved me, and I finished the race. He didn't just drive in as hard as he could and take us out. I think it does send a bad sign that it's acceptable, because it's not. You can't just chalk it up to, with that short track racing. Short track racing is moving a guy or bumping into a guy, not just flat out wrecking him. Otherwise, if I was in 8th place with 8 to go, I would just take out a car lap on my way to the front. So, and if I knew there was new repercussions, there wasn't going to be a rough driving penalty or anything like that. But eventually, NASCAR has to say that, okay, that's blatant and it's unacceptable, and you're not the winner of the race.
Okay, any additional questions? We'll turn this over to Kerry to continue that. But again, Denny, thank you. We look forward to having the short track showdown back at Richmond International Raceway. Kerry?
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Denny. Okay, Denny, looks like you got a pretty fast car. Looks like practice went pretty well for you here today. Just talk about maybe how that number 11 FedEx Express Toyota is getting around Daytona.
Really well. We honestly were very optimistic about our chances to win the Unlimited, and of course that was cut short with the first wreck that we were in. But all speed weeks, I've been very happy with our speed. Everything about it. It seems like the stars could be lining up, obviously, for a great Daytona 500. So my expectations is to go to the 150s and do everything I can to win. And hopefully get us a good starting spot and obviously great position for a 500 win. So it is so circumstantial, just like anything else. It's a restrictor plate race, but it's more strategic now than it's ever been since I've been in the sport. Other than like 2006, my rookie year, the cars are driving very, very similar to that in the sense of how you need to work the draft. So it's good to see that the pack racing is back and there's no more two-car tandem. And so it definitely is going to be a skilled driver's Daytona 500 to win.
Okay, we'll start with Jenna, and then we'll go to Mike Massaro, and then to Lee Spencer. Go ahead.
Hey, Denny, I want to back up to Larson and CE, kind of. You said eventually NASCAR is going to have to say it's not acceptable. we know what the reaction is from fans after something like Phoenix with Jeff and Clinton, and that seems to get NASCAR attention and drivers' attention and fans, and people start, they turn in, and NASCAR gets a lot more attention in a wider base. So if the point is to win the race, and we all know what the fans react to, why is that not acceptable?
Because they have a black flag, and that's what the black flag is for. When they started our sport, they had a black flag, and it got used when it needed to get used. And ever since I grew up racing in go-karts, it got used when you did something blatant and inappropriate. So I think that drivers are more apt to do things like that nowadays. It seems like when they don't run in the series, there is no payback to be had, because it's just a one-off race, and it's he knows he don't have to answer to that guy the next week. That's why you don't see it in the Cup Series and on down, the guys that run regular, because they know, if they take out some guy out, he's going to get it right back the next week, and next thing you know, you're wasted a whole weekend. So I think that's some of the reason why it happens, but it's guys were, just watching the race running over each other so much that eventually, you want to see longer than a 1.5 lap run. And in order to do that, you got to calm the drivers down. If it's blatant, there's some things that are blatant and others that are not. We aren't talking about the bump and runs in the other races, because they weren't as blatant. I don't think that there was any judgment call in the late model race. It was black and white, and it was on the black side. So I think that NASCAR makes judgment calls all the time when it comes to maybe blending on the racetrack or what have you. They can make a judgment call on something like that, which I don't even know if it's part of NASCAR's deal. But whoever the series is officiated by needs to set a precedence for sure. I just don't think that the younger guys coming up need to come with that mentality that it's just okay to just plow into someone and wreck them. This isn't a demolition derby.
Go ahead, Mike.
Mike Massaro, ESPN. Denny, there's some curiosity. We all know Danica's got a fast car being on the pole, but there's some curiosity as to whether or not, because she's a rookie, that veterans would be inclined to draft with her and work with her. Will you draft with her, or do you think you still need to see more out of her before you make that decision?
I would use her just like I would use any other driver, honestly. We're not out there drafting with each other. Stop laughing. It's yeah, I know what you mean. Y'all are all sick.
You were saying?
Yeah, because we're not out there drafting with each other because we like each other. It's because we're using each other to get where we want to go. So I think any driver would I don't know. I'm going to say use her to get a position that he wanted to get to. So the only reason people won't draft with you is if you're erratic behind the wheel, if you can't hold a steady lane, if you can't, if you're very erratic with letting out of the throttle or using the brakes or something. That's what sets the red flag off that, okay, let's go up to the next guy. And really, most every driver, when two cars are side by side and you see the third car choose one person or the other, it's because they trust that person more than the other. So it's you can prove yourself very, very easily by just holding a steady wheel.
Lee
Spencer, Fox Sports. That being said, and since you had a front row seat to what happened the other night, what's going on with side drafting and how loose the guys are getting? We saw it today with Ryan Newman, lost it. Matt Kenseth the other day in practice. What's the difference between the old car and the new car with side drafting, and what's the sensation when you're being passed?
I haven't seen it be that big of a difference. I think the biggest thing is that these cars just have less downforce in the rear, which is going to make for the back of the cars not sticking as well. So the side draft seems bigger because the overall downforce in the rear is less. So I think that passing is so hard with this short spoiler, which is good. Don't change that. Is that people are using every inch of the side draft now. before the old Generation 5 car punched such a huge hole in the air that, I mean, Ray Charles could see the pocket of air that formed from that car. So I think that it's just this car, you really have to be in the slipstream of and be strategic with finding that air that everyone is using every inch of the side draft, and it's making the inside car be less stable because of it.
I know we've got a few questions left, but his team needs him at the truck, so we'll finish with David Caravello.
Wow, pressure. David Caravello, NASCAR.com. When Kevin was in here the other night, he talked about how he was looking for where his mirrors he thought they were going to be, and they weren't there, and he thought that contributed to the first two big crashes of Speed Weeks. Is that an issue? These mirrors being slightly different because of the dimensions of this car? Is that causing some of this stuff?
Well, the biggest thing I've seen is the sides of the cars. The back quarter panels are obviously flared out more. So what we've had to do is move our mirrors accordingly to see more of the left side or right side or what have you. And by doing that, it changes your depth perception of the inside car, whether he's there or not. So really, I think that it's all a learning process, and really it's none of the wrecks in Speed Weeks so far have been the car's fault. It's just really the guys behind the wheel, and me included, that just are learning, and it just takes time to get it right. That's why we can't go and practice without wrecking.